This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 30th of June 2020 and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, referendum, the road chosen. In the Standard, Raila's family opens up on his surgery. And in the Star, is a Matiang'i Kagwe ticket in the making? And I suspect let's begin there. Sounds like an interesting candidature, to say the least. And I think 2022 will show us things, and they're beginning to do so. So the Star speculates that CS Matiang'i and CS Kagwe could be a winning pair, and that Uhuru could be leaning that way in terms of succession matters, because, you know, they've done such formidable jobs in each of their dockets, in interior and in health. And so the Star goes on to lay out its evidence. It says that they have close and unfettered access to the president, which is a tick if you're trying to succeed him. And that they have a formidable track record, as I said, but also that Matiang'i received anointing, or is about to receive anointing from the Maasai community through Olelenku. They're just waiting for Corona to end, in which they can carry out that ceremony. But that the Kisii community has already given its blessing to Matiang'i and said, you know, go forth, go for the top seat. And so it goes on to also tell us, it was a commentary of many different stories, but goes on to tell us that there are people who have been in line, and that Matiang'i and Kagwe better get to the back of that line. And those people are Kalonzo Musyoka, there's Gideon Moi, apparently Mukisa Kitui, and Raila himself. Will they just let the newbies, the new kids on the block, come and take over? And then you have also people saying Kagwe may not be able to sort of wrestle or get the Gema leadership vote, that other people can do a better job of that.
All right.
So yeah, lots.
It's an interesting story, and of course these are two very savvy and politically minded individuals. I think you give them two of the toughest cabinet, you know, jobs, and they do a fantastic job. They thrive at them.
And for one of them, got it in the time of a pandemic, right?
Exactly.
So he thought it would be smooth sailing, but it wasn't.
But I think, GK, this is one of the points I believe you might bring up. Just because you're a competent and adequate number two doesn't mean that you will do a great job at being a great number one.
Exactly. And high visibility is not that. I mean, you can be visible, yes, which is what we're seeing.
Stick in your lane.
We're constantly seeing them there. But I think, you know, they also should give kudos to their boss, who is allowing them to shine.
2J, does that observation also apply to the deputy president?
I think it does. Stay in your lane.
Well, I think we can say that the Star has given us some food for thought, but we do have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I think it's thoughtful.
It is,
although speculative, I think it's giving us food for thought and a break for Kenyans to think about something else.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Right? So shall we move to the Daily Nation?
Yes, and so in the Daily Nation, referendum, the road chosen. So following the purge of the last few weeks in Jubilee and following the political coalitions the party has entered into, President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, we're told, are confident that they will be able to push the BBI proposals through the parliamentary initiative as opposed to the long drawn-out popular initiative. The popular initiative is the one that Ekuru Aukot took last year, I believe, and he failed miserably. So just a few steps in terms of what the parliamentary initiative entails. Article 256 of the Constitution. The first is that the draft constitutional amendment bill may be introduced in either house of parliament, and then after its first reading, 90 days must lapse before the second reading is held. Presumably that is to allow for discussion, for debate about the bill. Number three, for it to pass, the Constitution requires that it secures at least 2/3 of the support of MPs in both the National Assembly and the Senate during the second and third readings. And then once that's done, the speakers of the two houses jointly submit the bill to the president for assent and publication. However, if it requires, if that bill includes any of the items that require a referendum, that's when it goes to the IEBC. And within 90 days, IEBC has to hold a referendum, and then Kenyans decide. And so by around June next year, really, it's about like a 6 month to 7 month process.
Yeah.
By around June next year, we could be in a new constitutional dispensation.
Wow.
But in some, this is the path of least resistance, bypassing the MCAs altogether.
Yeah.
Which I think.
So is the Senate useless?
Which I think is what the presidency and what the coalition between Uhuru and Raila Odinga wanted
all
to
about.
In the first place, yeah.
And honestly, at that point, I think I really have to give us on this table, or rather the fifth estate, a lot of kudos. Because I feel like for the past 2 or 3 weeks, all the different dailies have been trying to find a new way to say the exact same thing. And I feel like today
constitution change is
the
coming.
constitution change is coming. Guys, I think we realized this is happening. You know, can we get it together?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen the president has really lined the way up straight from parliament all the way to the Senate. This thing is going to happen.
It's happening.
Whether we want it to or not.
Yeah,
So,
but I still maintain that citizens should demand some part in this process.
Yes.
Even if it does go through the parliamentary way, I think find a way to voice your opinions, your views, see how we can get the best constitution that we can. And today is World Parliament Day, guys.
of course.
Yeah, so
As we head
consider
towards BBI.
what is your parliament and legislature doing for you? Are they protecting your liberties in the best way that they can? But yeah, so who do we give it to?
Well, let's look at the standard first.
Yes.
Again, we have more news about one of our longest serving, politicians or people in leadership.
Yeah.
Raila's family open up on his surgery. So I think this is a long-awaited answer or kind of, information as to what has been going on. So his wife, Ida, his brother, Oboro, and his younger sister, Ruth, have all spoken to the Standard separately to finally confirm that he did indeed take that flight out to Abu Dhabi and had some surgery on, I think it was his nerves, I believe.
Yeah.
But they've said that he will not be coming back so soon.
Yeah.
They said that they want him to rest up until he is able to come back and get back to his busy schedule.
Yeah.
They don't say when he's coming back.
Will this affect BBI timelines?
I really hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm really nervous because
he
if
was
Baba's
the
out
champion.
of the equation, then the oomph perhaps with BBI
Gets
might be lost.
Or slows down, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so who do we give it to? I'm leaning towards the star. I thought it was thought-provoking.
I agree.
Good one.
Some food for thought and something new.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I agree with
So
that.
I will toss the rest. Let us move on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yeah.
Can we begin with the Daily Nation?
Yes, in the Daily Nation, we have our perennial candidates. These are candidates who always run but never make it. And so we have caricatures here of some notables. Dressed in an orange shirt is Raila Odinga throwing dirt at RUTO, who's also in a white and dirty shirt, throwing dirt at Raila. Then Gideon and Musalia appear to be wrestling. Kalonzo at the back appears to be picking up a pile of dirt. And then the Makueni governor has distanced himself, is watching by the sideline saying, Wanjiku has spoken, I have listened.
This is
Kivutha Kibwana.
Yeah.
And he recently mentioned that he will be on the ballot come 2022 running for president.
Yeah,
We wish him all the best.
the Cumbers came out last week because Alfred
Alfred
Mutua
Mutua.
also declared his candidature
Yes.
for
Good for them.
2022.
But of course, I think the irony of this cartoon is if you're talking about people who mudsling, right?
Yeah.
That's saying things that are bad about your opponent because you want to harm their reputation.
Yeah.
I mean, are we saying that all 6 of these individuals have not had, a few mudslinging moments themselves?
Exactly,
Yet
including
Kibwana
himself.
is standing forward and saying, but Wanjiku, you've called upon me, therefore I'll be there for you. Yeah, it's a bit...
Some
not so
say
true.
voting for him will be wasting his vote, but maybe we should normalize that. Anyway, let's move to the Standard.
In the Standard, we have Kaso, and I guess we have the drawings of the solar system. We have firstly the sun, we have this large coronavirus, and then on the other side we have planet Earth. And the caption there says, "This darkness shall pass too."
Encouraging but boring.
Very boring, yeah. I think
Yeah.
it kind of like goes back to the speech that the president gave during Madaraka Day, again reminding the country that this too shall pass, that things will get better. And I think if we continue to think about it in that way, it'll keep us going. Yeah.
Can we
What
toss
a
it on it
boring
being
cartoon.
boring? Yeah.
Oh,
So
gosh.
in the Star, we have a train that's being stopped on its tracks by a caricature of none other than Charity Ngilu, Governor Charity Ngilu of Kitui. And the train is named impeachment, and it's from Kitui. And this comes as 3 lawyers who were representing the governor tried to, enter the county assembly grounds, and they were kicked out unceremoniously. LSK has since given statements sort of calling into question what kind of behavior this is, political faux pas, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, some have said that this impeachment motion has come from, Kalonzo Musyoka, we don't know. But she is a governor who operates as a minority in her county assembly.
Yeah.
So I know that's going to be a challenge generally.
Yeah.
Why 2 years to the end of her term?
Gilu is a political gangster.
She's going to make it.
She's going to make it. I have faith. I believe in her.
Yeah.
My only issue with the cartoon is that I find it a bit deterministic. I feel like it's saying that she has no choice. There's no randomness. Everything is set in stone. This train is going to run over her.
Coming,
And I think if we look at Anne Waiguru, I think some of us were certain that it was a done deal. And look at what happened. But I guess if she's a gangster...
Never say never.
So
who do we give it? Between the Star and the mudslinging of Daily Nation?
I'll let you guys choose.
I'm not inspired.
I'm
You're
not
not
inspired by
inspired?
any of them.
Wow, okay, well, I'll go with the Star.
Okay.
Because
You
I
know
thought...
what? I'll back you on that.
There we go. So the Star gives us our winning cartoon. And what is our final thought?
And now our final thought is inspired by a book entitled Black Box Thinking: Why Some People Never Learn from Their Mistakes, But Some Do, written by Matthew Syed. So, in fact, this guy is a famous former international table tennis player. So that's a ping pong, the ones with the little bats. But most people probably don't know that he has a first-class degree in PPE, which is Philosophy, Politics and Economics from the University of Oxford.
Wow.
So this book, I can say, is quite interesting. It's written in the kind of style that they call Gladwellian, from Malcolm Gladwell, just like chock full of stories. And so in this book, he gives us an invitation to think differently about failure. So this title, Black Box Thinking, comes from black boxes, which are standardly included in every airplane, so that if an incident occurs, there's a recording of the flight data and a recording of the audio communications as the plane, goes into its turbulent moment.
Yeah.
And when there's a crash, rescuers always aim to find these black boxes, because then they can analyze the data, they can find the cause of the crash, they can dissect it, it can be scrutinized, and then this information is shared widely across the aeronautic space, but also through other industries as well. And so obviously we all know everybody wants to avoid plane crashes as much as possible, because they're so costly in forms of human life, but also they really undermine trust in that aviation industry as a whole. So this is a model of an industry where when there's a failure, it's treated as a significant learning experience, with the result that airline travel has then become the safest form of transport we have today. And so this contrasts, the author says, with a lot of other human endeavors, and he really focuses in this book on healthcare, where he says information about failures isn't often widely shared. And this is for a number of reasons, and I think the first and foremost one is a fear of litigation. If a surgeon does something unorthodox, if somebody dies on the operating table, they don't want to share exactly what happened, because there's this fear of this legal comeback. And so what he argues here is that we need to take this different attitude to failure and see it in the way that the aviation industry does. And he explores this intimate relationship between success and failure and shows why we need to transport this black box thinking into everything else we do in our lives. And one idea he pulls from comes from the philosopher Karl Popper, who described how science progresses not by proving theories to be true, but by trying to disprove them. And so he says, you can never fully confirm an empirical hypothesis, but you can refute it by finding a single piece of evidence against it. And so in a sense, an easy way to put it is that the failure of a hypothesis is how science begins, or how it makes progress. You should have your assumption followed by a refutation, so proving your assumption wrong, rather than having a hypothesis and doing everything in your might to find it to be true. And so he argues that we make progress in all areas by making mistakes. And his argument is that we should make failure a more positive experience, rather than treating it as something terrifying that we should constantly be afraid of. And he says that we always have this cognitive bias towards optimism and a fear of being responsible for our errors. And so he says that you should just acknowledge when you make an error, because if you don't, it could have disastrous consequences. And we shouldn't just pretend that these errors don't ever exist. I thought it was a very easy read, very good book.
It was. I really enjoyed it, and it led me to think about what he says is a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So he tells us about the Beckham Effect. This is chapter 13. And here he's saying, how do you create a growth culture, right? So he paints a picture. David Beckham, as we all know, captained England for 6 years, 59 games, scored goals in 3 World Cups. He's won the Premier League 6 times, FA Cup twice, UEFA Champions League, all of those things, right? But also he's done a lot for football. And so he says that Beckham's forte was this free kick, to being a good free kick taker and crosser. And his most famous strike was 2.5 minutes into the stoppage time in England's crucial game against Greece in the 2001 England World Cup qualifier, right? And so England is trailing 2-1 at the time, but they need to at least draw in order to qualify. So foul is done, and Beckham is about to take this free kick. And so he takes a run up and, effortlessly, does this kick, and it goes into the goal. And you can see the video up here. But the author then takes us back to say, how did he become this great? How did he master all this? And it starts when he's 6 years old. And he would spend afternoons practicing what they call keep-me-ups. And this is where, you kick from your foot to your knee to your head. And when he began, he couldn't do very many. He could do 5 or 6 before, losing control. But within 3 years, he was able to do about 2,003 keep-me-ups. And this would take about 15 minutes of his time. And his mother would say to the author, I was amazed at how devoted Beckham was. He would start when he got back from school and then continue until his dad got back from work. And then they would go down to the park and practice some more. He was such an amazing kid when it came to his appetite for hard work. So there the key lesson was hard work. And then when he perfected the keep-me-ups, he then decided he was going to perfect his free kicks. And so he set that aside, a skill that he had learned, and then now he was doing free kicks. And he went through the same motion. Every evening, practicing till he got better. His dad would, stand between Beckham and him and move the target backwards to make it harder for him. So now you look back at 2001 and see why such a skill would become so useful to him. So the author sort of finishes this by saying that it is striking how often successful people have a counterintuitive perspective on failure. They strive to succeed like everyone else, but they're intimately aware of how indispensable failure is to the overall process. And they embrace rather than shy away from this part of the journey. So when he couldn't get it right, he focused on that thing that he couldn't get right, and he did it till he got it right. But then the author also warns us that a growth mindset doesn't mean you do something and persevere till because you may never get it. A growth mindset is also acknowledging when you actually just can't do something, leave it, acknowledge it was a failure, and move on. So the lesson here is have a growth mindset, but also because you believe in the ability to develop your whatever skill through hard work, that you don't have to stop at what you were given. You can nurture yourself into greatness. So that was what I got from it.
Failure also inspires great solutions. It can be demoralizing, yes, but it can function as a driver of progress and innovation, says the author. And it can inspire you to see problems in a different light. And with new perspective comes new solutions. And so he gives an example of a man by the name John Shepherd Barron, who conceived the ATM. When he once forgot to go to the bank and pick up some cash. And so having failed to have the cash at hand when he needed it inspired him to think of a new solution around that. That was sometime in the 1960s. But not only does it catalyze novel solutions, it also gets us to see or to get to the root of a problem. And once again, there's another story here that the author tells. And this is an example from social science research conducted in the early 2000s here in Kenya by a group of economists. And so they used a trial and error method in Busia and Teso regions. These economists wanted to improve the quality of local schools. And so they wanted to know whether handing out free textbooks to schools would boost grades. Intuitively, they thought that this would work. However, they soon discovered that schools without this aid performed just as well. And so they tried several other approaches, many of which failed. And finally, they stumbled upon a solution that actually worked. that got to the root of the problem. And that was deworming medicine. And so when they gave the children medicine to deworm them, basically, the children showed up at school more often. They stopped skipping school. They could concentrate more. They could apply themselves more for in class, at home, homework, and that kind of thing. And so through that trial and error method, figuring out what doesn't work, they were able to hone in on exactly what the problem was. So in sum, by allowing yourself to fail on a small scale, it becomes easier to discern which strategies are working and then apply them on a larger scale.
Yeah, fantastic. So don't be afraid to fail.
Not at all.
So on a day where we had a double win from the Star, winning headline from the Star, winning cartoon from the Star, I want to leave you with this. Thank you. If we wish to fulfill our potential as individuals and organizations, we must redefine failure. You must have a willingness to try, fail, and learn. And fail fast so you can move on. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a lovely